guys, Rift here. I thought I'd just do an update to my WvW Guardian guide that I put onto the forum in a video format so that I can explain some more of the skills and rotations that we may use. It's predominantly WvW guild rating focused and is aimed at players that are relatively new to the class or relatively new to the game. As a result, it's a fairly tanky build based on surviving and giving boons to your allies. And doesn't do a great deal of damage. Therefore, I wouldn't recommend this for any sort of PvE content or even solo roaming, where you may want to get a little bit more damage into your build. I'll look at the armor and trinkets first, go for possible weapon setups that you can use, sigils, the utility skills that you'll use, and then finally some of the trait loadouts that you can use for various different variations on the build. In terms of armor, it's pretty much given that you should be running soldier gear for the majority of guild raid builds, and particularly on a guardian. It's part of the melee train, so you need to be have enough survivability to do that. And even though a guardian is a heavy armor class, they do have a very low health pool, joint lowest in the game, so it's important to get a little bit of vitality into any of the builds that you use. In terms of rune choice, it generally splits into two different sets of runes. A majority of the guild will use runes of the trooper, they used to be called runes of the soldier, which give vitality, toughness, and the sixth bonus gives shouts removing a condition from yourself and 4 other allies. You'll always run at least one shout, stand your ground on a guardian at all times for the stability that it gives, but there's often 2 or more shouts on your bar, so removing the condition is extremely useful. I've personally switched over to Melandra runes. I find that if the warriors are doing their jobs, you'll be getting conditions removed from you anyway. I like the minus stun duration, minus condition duration, and it does offer a bit more toughness to the build as well, at the sacrifice of some health. But that's really a personal choice, because I only run one shout most of the time anyway, so I don't really benefit from the 6th bonus of the soldier rune. In terms of trinkets, there's various different ways. You can go full PvT, but you will lose out obviously in some crit chance. Quite a bit of the Guardian's traits trigger off of a critical hit, so I like to keep this up to about 30%, so that when you've got Fury on yourself, you will get about 50% chance to crit. It's just it's just something that I aim for to get, and with my precision food, like I say, it brings it just above the 30% mark. For that I run 3 PvT things and 3 knights to get that little bit extra precision. There is quite a lot going for using full celestial gear. If I can just equip that, you will gain, let's see, what's the other one? You will gain a little bit of precision. You'll lose some power, but you will gain some healing power as well. I think you keep, from my setup of 3 PvT, 3 knights, it's about the same amount of health that you have. It's just another option that you can go for. In terms of weapons, I use knights again just to get that extra little bit of precision to get my critical chance up. The main weapons for a guardian will be either staff, hammer, or greatsword. On my greatsword, I actually run berserker. I find that with the extra mobility that you get in a greatsword, I don't really need as much survivability. But if you're new to the class, I would recommend either PvT or knight's gear for your weapons rather. I run at the moment Bloodlust sigils. Like I say, I've already got my critical chance, so I just stack Bloodlust. I've actually got 2 Bloodlusts on at the moment. I just want to show something off. As of this patch, if you were to switch out both of your weapons with gear that doesn't have Bloodlust sigils, you would lose the Bloodlust stacks, but the reason I keep them is I have an extra Bloodlust sigil on one of my underwater weapons. If I was to say build the stacks, I didn't have this equipped, and then I replaced them, I would lose the Bloodlust buff. So I run Bloodlust and Restoration on my stacking set, and I run Fire and Restoration on my main set, if you like. Other options may be Hydromancy is quite good, chilling foes whenever you switch weapon. Stamina, endurance refilled each time you kill a foe. That's the sort of cheaper version of energy sigils, which gives you a full dodge, 50% of this bar, every time you swap weapon. I guess you could also go for air sigils instead of fire, and there's bound to be a lot more combinations, but these are just some examples of things that you could use. In terms of weapons, like I say, I run staff, hammer. Most guardians will use a staff. It gives empower, which gives might, 12 stacks of it, with 3 applications of 4 stacks of might for 10 seconds with no boon duration. And it's, well, if you give 12 might, each stack of might gives 35 power. That's 12 stacks of might to 5 allies is a total of 2,100 power, which is almost another person in the fight in terms of damage output. So it's extremely key. You got your symbol of swiftness, which ticks, I think it's 4 times, and adds a little bit of swiftness each time. That's extremely useful for movement over the field, but it's also good when you're in a fight just to cast it. If the enemy's coming in, cast it in front of where you think they're going to be. You can attack, and it's just extra little bit of damage to them. The Orb of Light, really whenever I switch to my staff, I will double tap this. What that does is it's a projectile, but it will also heal allies if you detonate it. Finally, or second to last, you've got the Ring of Warding, which is a 1200 range. It's generally just under the range that you want to put it at, but that's the thing about it. It creates a line for 5 seconds that enemies without stability cannot pass. It's great for making chokes within battlefields. It can be used defensively to split up a Zerg. It can be used defensively when you're running away, cast it behind you. And the final skill in the staff is obviously your Wave of Loot. You will hit 5 people with this at a time, and you'll get a lot of loot bags. It does decent damage for what it is, and like I say, it's hitting 5 people. With 50% precision or critical chance, 5 people, that's probably a guaranteed 2 critical hits, which will trigger the traits that we'll talk about later. Hammer, you have a fairly slow auto attack. It's actually a chain. It does cleave. It will hit 3 enemies. And it's just one of those better than nothing things. If you do manage to get 3 hits in a row, it will create a symbol of protection that will be a light field, plus it'll give protection to your allies, which is really nice. You do have a very low cooldown blast finisher on 2, does decent damage, a little bit of a leap, I think it's 300 range, and that's just really nice. If you've got any water that's down, you'll gain area healing, any light that's down, you'll gain area retaliation. It's just really nice. Zealot's Embrace is my favourite skill in the game. If you are running into a Zerg, if they're in a line in front of you and you cast this for 1200 range, this will do damage, plus it will immobilize for 2 seconds. And it's just really, really nice when you're running into a big group to cast that just before your melee train hits them. Banish is a very situational skill. Use it beside cliffs for maximum fun. And you've also got the Ring of Warding. You'll often hear me and Keith call this out when we get into a group of people. If we manage to catch that, it's exactly the same as your line of warding. It won't allow, for 5 seconds, it won't allow anyone without stability, any of your enemies, to cross it. Plus, it's also another light field. I don't tend to use Greatsword, but it does have a lot of good skills. The leap will also blind, it's a good range, it does decent damage. You've got a symbol that will give you retaliation, or constant tick. You've got a whirling finisher that will give cleansing bloats if you put it in a light field. And this binding blade and pull is extremely key. When you cast it first, you'll send out 5 blades to your 5 nearest enemies. If they don't have stability, you can use the second attack on that, and it'll pull them all in towards you, to allow mainly for a guardian, a staff guardian, hammer guardian, to then cast their ring and trap them within it, and allow your necros, your elementalists, your damage based warriors to just do focus damage on them. Your general rotations for the weapons, for a hammer, for greatsword, you'd leap in with 3, you put your symbol of wrath down, you'd spin with 2 in it, and you've got your auto attack, which is also a cleave that gives might, and you've also got the option of using binding blade. I would tend to try to stay away from this on the initial push, as most of your enemies will have stability up, but on the second push, or if you get a good boon rip on them, it's definitely worth using. Calling it out, allowing your hammer guardians to get them trapped, and allow you to get 5-6 people downed instantly. For hammer, there's not really a great rotation to it, but I will say that usually when I'm running in, I do use Zealot's Embrace to immobilize. I'll usually, because it doesn't have much of a leap on it, the hammer, I'll use skill 2, Mighty Blow, to get a little bit extra from the people that have leapt into the fight before me. I'll wait and use Ring of Warding whenever I hear pull, and Mighty Blow, it's got such a low cooldown that it's pretty much, you should use that in place of your, do a couple of hits on your auto attack, but then use that when it comes off cooldown. In terms of utilities, healing skills, I wouldn't really use Signet of Resolve. It's got such a long cooldown, and you get plenty of condition removal from warriors with their war horns, from other utility skills, and from any condition duration reduction, foods, or the Melandro runes that you use. Shelter is probably the recommended one here, as it does block attacks for a whole 2 seconds. It's a great get out of dodge button if you're stuck in the middle of an oncoming melee train. You can cast that, move out of the way, and regroup, get back to the commander if you get knocked out a bit. As I've said before, stand your ground is pretty much always have it on. It's a stun breaker. It gives 5 seconds of stability, 5 seconds of retail to your allies. The reason it's saying 6 seconds is I've got a little bit of boon duration, which I'll get into later. Purging Flames is really, really nice. It not only removes 3 conditions, it also creates a fire field that you can blast for might, and anyone standing within the field will have 33% condition duration reduction. For other skills, there's a lot of different options. really, I'd stay away from any of the spirit weapons. They'll just get instantly destroyed in a fight. Most of the signets aren't really that great, but there is Signet of Judgment's quite good. Given as a Sunbreaker, it reduces damage on you, and the active will also give retaliation to people and weakness to your enemies. Um, it's a good option, but I tend not to run it. The consecrations are the ones that I would mainly use. You've got Hallowed Ground, which is another fire field. It gives stability in an area around you for 12 seconds when traded. Sanctuary has got a really long cooldown, but it's quite nice for regroups. It's really useful for dropping on any sort of incoming portal bomb that you notice if you get this up and they portal bomb into that, they just insta die. The other ones, there's a couple of shouts. I would stay away from save yourselves, as it can be a bit of a suicide button. Stand your ground. Retreat is decent, but it just isn't particularly useful. It'll often get just knocked off by one auto attack from the enemy. But hold your line, hold the line. Protection and regeneration to allies. Really nice. Both of these boons, and it's a fairly low cooldown as well. What's the other options? Wall of Reflection is really nice. Wall of Reflection and Hallowed Ground are the main ones that I use. Wall of Reflection reflects projectiles. If you put that as either a defensive or an offensive thing, putting up in front of his Erg is really quite nice. Using it in tight areas is really nice, where a lot of the casters that are in the enemy team will just kill themselves off of this. It's good for putting on top of walls and keeps, things like that. I guess the final decent one for a new start is maybe the Contemplation of Purity. If you're finding that you're getting taken down from conditions quite easily, you will convert every single condition into a boon, and it also breaks stun. Elites, there's only really two options. Tome of Wrath isn't worth it. Renewed Focus is really good. It's another sort of get out of dodge one. Blocking attacks. Well, this is actually an invulnerability. Plus, it will also recharge all of your virtues, which I'm just a way to get into, making it a really nice skill. But Tome of Courage is what I run, and it gives you support spells. I will cast it in a second, but it will give you a protection on number 3, a condition removal on number 1, a full heal that takes 5 seconds to channel on number 5, and just a spammable heal on number 1. So your rotation would be, when you open this, it's protection on number 3, it gives it an icon in front of you, number 2 to remove conditions, and spam 1 until 2 and 3 come off cooldown. Like I say, you can channel 5, but it will take quite a bit of time, and if you get interrupted, it just cancels it. But that full heals 5 allies in a 1200 radius around you. Really nice if you manage to get that off. Can turn the tide of a battle. That's it in terms of your weapons and utility skills. In terms of one-handed weapons, there's maybe Mace Shield might work, but I wouldn't recommend them. I stick with the two-handers, and when you get more comfortable with the class, then you could maybe experiment with using other ones. The final thing really is, traits and food. This is just my current build, but what I'll do is I'll refund the traits. Mainly, you want to stick into Valor, Honour, and Virtues. That's the 3 main lines. The top 2 don't really offer a great deal for World Reload builds, or at least for tanky ones. They'll obviously give toughness, vitality, and boon duration, and will reduce the virtue cooldowns. Virtue of Resolve is a really nice extra little bit of health that can come in handy to give a little bit of extra boost to your party if you're getting really low. And the Virtue of Courage gives Aegis, but when traded can also give stability as well. We'll get into that later. In terms of the key traits, I'd say going 2 points into Honour and picking up Superior Aria is pretty key. I'd say that it's almost a must. Excuse me, sorry, I just had to cough there. And another really useful one that I'd recommend is going 4 points into Virtues and picking up Indomitable Courage. Like I said, that will give stability to Virtue of Courage. The fact that you've also got 20% reduction in cast time for these is also just another added benefit to this. You'll also gain retaliation whenever you activate any of these, so just keep spamming number 1 to gain that retail, and then use these. Well, it's as a bonus when you use these. For the third sort of key trait that I'd really recommend to a new player is to go 6 into Valor and pick up Altruistic Healing. Anytime that you apply a boon to your allies, you'll gain a little bit of health, which means that if I just equip a staff, anytime you use Empower, like I say, you're given 3 bursts of 4 stacks of might to 5 allies, so that's 15 boons that you're giving out. It can get a lot of health onto you, and just in general, just whenever you're using any of these skills, you can see you're given 4 different boons to 5 allies there. That's another 20 applications of altruistic healing. It's really, really nice, and for a newbie, that's pretty much a requirement. Another useful one is Strength in Numbers, which is going 2 into Valor. It's the 4th trait there. It gives 150 toughness to you and 4 allies. It should be noted that if you're in a party with another Guardian, make sure to ask them if they're running Strength in Numbers. There's no point in you both taking it, as it doesn't stack. So just have one of you take it and the other one not. In terms of builds, I'd say the main ones that people run are 00, 30, 30, 10 or 00662 now, I guess, after the build. It allows you to pick up altruistic healing. For hammer users, Glacial Heart chills out enemies on critical hits is really nice. Like I say, that's why I take a bit of precision in my build to make sure that these sorts of things can trigger. Retributive Armor will get you, because you use a lot of toughness in the build anyway, will get you that extra crit chance. Purity, losing conditions once every 10 seconds. I personally don't enjoy using this trait. I don't really see the benefit of it when I'm actually fighting, but it's another option if you don't have anything else to take. Say you don't run a hammer, it may be worth taking that if you don't need to run Strength in Numbers because someone else in your party has it. You could run Purity, Retributive Armor, and Altruistic Healing, something like that. In Honour, Battle Presence gives your allies health regeneration, really quite nice. Or you could go for a two-handed mastery because that's what you're using, plus Empowering Might sort of idea, where every time you're given a critical hit, you're giving Might. So when you're spamming 1 to collect your loot, say you're hitting 5 foes, 50% precision, you're going to do maybe 2 critical hits, so that's 2 applications of Might to your party members, so that'll be 10 total heals with altruistic healing. You can see how the build sort of starts to synergize. And in this one, again, Superior Aria, never take this off. The reduction in shout time is key to allow you to repeatedly give stability to allies. For this, for 10 points in, or 2 points into virtues, a lot of these are good. I like Master of Consecrations because excuse me, sorry. Because it does give reduction. I tend to run 2 consecrations, so it does give you. Where's my other one? Where's my other one? It does give you quite a good amount of benefit there. But consecrated ground is nice as well to be able to cast this as you're running into somewhere. To take hallowed ground, and you see where your commander's regrouping. You put it down there, and by the time you get over there, it's on the ground. You've got stability for 12 seconds. Lovely. I guess retaliation lasts longer is quite a nice trait as well. But there's not actually really that bad a choice from 2, 4, 5, or 6 in that slot. I quite like taking 10 points out of honour, sticking with my 2-handed mastery, my superior area, and then being able to take the indomitable courage to give us an extra source of stability there. I think that's quite powerful there. I think quite a lot of the people in the guild run this build. If you can live without the altruistic healing, which is a little bit of a crutch, you can put 00446 and pick up something like Elite Focus if you're running Book. Another 3 condition removal there on your Virtue of Resolve, plus you're getting more boon duration, plus you're getting your virtues recharging faster, so you're able to use them more often. Like I say, there's not really a poor loadout that you can go with here, but if you want to discuss it in more detail, just hit me up anytime in game, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with your build. I guess the final thing would be, there was one thing that I wanted to touch on, was I used to use boon duration runes, which was 2 monk, 2 traveller, 2 water, but unfortunately it got nerfed pretty hard. It used to give 45% boon duration, which was really nice. I used to run, I think this trait loadout actually, so I used to have 30% boon duration there. I used to eat 20% boon duration food and have that 45% for a total of 95% additional boon duration, given stability for, I think it was about 4 years per application that I used to give. It was just lovely. In terms of food, like I say, I would take precision food, get that precision up a little bit higher. The minus condition duration plus vitality is really nice. I'm a cheapskate, so I just got the poultry and leek, but if you can afford the lemongrass, all the better. Another couple of options, I guess, would be your omnumberry compote, if it's quite blobby, or if you're running in a big group, 100% chance to gain health when you kill a foe. And I used to use the chocolate omnumberry creams, which is the boon duration food. I like the truffle ravioli as well. Again, precision, getting more procs out of that, and the toughness is always a really nice bonus. As it's been almost half an hour, I'm going to wrap it up here. I may do a sort of follow-up guide with a bit more focus on how you would actually fight. But like I say, if there's any questions that you've got at all, anything that's unclear or anything that you want to disagree with, I'd be more than happy to discuss it either in game or on the forum. Just set a post it up, and yeah, have fun, get a lot of loot, spam a lot of 1, and make sure to have quite a lot of bag space to pick up all the loot you'll get as a guardian. Thanks guys, if you stayed till the end. It turned into quite a long video, but I hope you enjoy, and See you later.